They'll smile at you when you're weak, and they'll fear you when you're untouchable. But the gap between those two states, that's where most men die quietly. You weren't born into power. You weren't handed respect. And nobody's coming to build your reputation for you. The world is watching you right now, deciding whether you're a threat or a target. And here's the part that destroys men. By the time you need fear, it's already too late to create it. Machiavelli understood something that still breaks the average man today. He said it coldly, clinically, like a surgeon cutting into bone. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But here's what he didn't say out loud. Here's the line that changes everything. Fear isn't built in the moment you need it. It's built 1,000 moments before, when no one's watching, when nothing's at stake, when you're still invisible. That's when you plant the seeds. Because the man who waits until he's cornered to show his teeth, he's already lost. You see it everywhere. The guy who's always friendly, always available, always bending. Then one day someone crosses him, and he finally tries to push back, but no one takes him seriously. They laugh, they ignore him, or worse, they're confused. Why is he acting like this? He's never been like this before. And just like that, his anger becomes a joke. His boundary becomes theater, because he has no image to back it up. He spent years being harmless, and now he wants to be dangerous overnight. The world doesn't work that way. Reputation is currency, and you've been spending yours on being liked. That's the trap Machiavelli saw 500 years ago, the trap most men still walk into today, blind and smiling. You think power is something you earn through hard work and good intentions. That's the lie. Power is something you architecture. You design it. You build it in the shadows before anyone realizes what you're constructing. Because the moment people see you as weak, as safe, as predictable, that image fossilizes. It becomes your ceiling, and no amount of late effort will shatter it. The friends who take you for granted, the co-workers who walk over you, the women who see you as the backup plan. They're not doing it because they're evil. They're doing it because you taught them to. You showed them, through 1,000 micro-surrenders, that you're not a man to be cautious around, and now you're angry that they believe you. Machiavelli spent his life studying one thing: how men rise and how men fall. And he found a pattern. The men who survive aren't the kindest. They're not the most talented. They're the ones who control the narrative before the war even starts. They're the ones who make people hesitate before disrespecting them, not because they're loud, not because they're cruel, but because there's a quiet, undeniable weight to their presence. A history of boundaries that were never negotiated, a reputation that precedes them like a shadow. And when the chaos comes, when the stakes rise, when the room turns hostile, these men don't have to prove anything. Everyone already knows. But you're starting from zero, maybe less than zero. You've been a nice guy, the reliable one, the one who laughs at jokes made at his expense, the one who lets things slide because it's not that serious. And now you're realizing the cost. You're invisible when you need to be seen. You're dismissed when you need to be heard. And the worst part, you don't know how to flip it, because flipping it requires becoming someone you've never been. And that terrifies you more than staying stuck. Here's the truth that no one will tell you. Building an intimidating image isn't about becoming fake. It's about becoming unavailable to disrespect. It's about rewiring how people calculate you. Right now, they calculate you as safe, low risk, high reward. They can take from you and you won't retaliate. They can ignore you and you won't make waves. That's not a personality, that's a positioning error. And Machiavelli would tell you to fix it before you need it. Because the man who builds his image during peacetime, he never has to fight during war. This video is about that architecture. The rules Machiavelli would give you if he was sitting across from you today, watching you waste your potential on being harmless. These aren't theories. These aren't motivational phrases. These are the dark, tested principles that separate men who are respected from men who are tolerated. And if you're tired of being the latter, if you're done being the fallback, the pushover, the one people forget 5 minutes after you leave the room, then you're in the right place. Because what comes next isn't comfortable, but it's real, and it works. Let's begin. Rule number 1, never explain yourself to people who've already decided you're guilty. The moment you start defending yourself to someone who doesn't respect you, you've lost. Because defense is the language of the weak. It signals that their opinion matters more than your reality, and people can smell that. Machiavelli knew this instinctively. He watched princes fall, not because they were wrong, but because they cared too much about being understood. They spent their power trying to convince people who were never going to be convinced, and in that desperation, they looked small. You do the same thing. Someone accuses you of something, someone misinterprets your intentions, and instead of walking away, instead of letting your actions speak, you spiral into explanation mode. You write paragraphs, you justify, you seek closure, and with every word, you shrink. Here's the psychology. People don't respect what they can interrogate. The more you explain, the more they feel entitled to question you. It's a power inversion. They're no longer trying to understand you, they're testing how much control they have over you. And every time you respond, you're proving they have it. Look at the people you admire, the ones with real presence. They don't explain, they state, they move. And if you don't get it, that's your problem, not theirs. That's not arrogance, that's boundaries. That's understanding that your energy is finite and some people don't deserve access to it. Think about the last time you over-explained yourself. Maybe it was at work, maybe it was in a relationship. You felt misunderstood, so you tried to clarify. And what happened? Did they suddenly respect you more? Or did they just find new things to pick apart? The latter. Because an explanation without respect is just ammunition. You're handing people the tools to dismantle you. Machiavelli would tell you to stop, to let the confusion sit, to let people wonder, because mystery creates caution, and caution creates space. The space you've been losing by being an open book to people who don't even like reading. Here's the social consequence if you ignore this. You'll spend your entire life in other people's courtrooms, defending yourself against charges that were never real. You'll become exhausted, bitter, and resentful, and people will still see you the way they want to see you, because you taught them that your reality is negotiable. Don't do that. Silence is a weapon. Use it. If someone disrespects you and you don't explain, you don't defend, you just remove your presence or your favor, they'll feel that more than any argument you could have made. That's how you start building the image. Not through words, through withdrawal. If this hits you, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 2, let people see consequences before they see your anger. Anger without follow-through is just noise. And the world is full of noisy men who yell, threaten, and then do nothing. That's why no one fears them. Machiavelli wrote, "Men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries, but of more serious ones they cannot." Translation: if you're going to make someone feel your boundary, make sure it's felt. Half measures don't create respect, they create contempt. Because people see you as someone who's all bark, and once that image sets, it's almost impossible to reverse. You become the guy who gets mad but never follows through, the guy who complains but never leaves, the guy who threatens but never acts. That's not power, that's performance. Think about the men you actually respect, the ones you wouldn't cross. Are they loud? Are they constantly reminding you of their dominance? No, they're quiet, until they're not. And when they act, it's swift, it's final, and it sends a message that echoes. That's the image Machiavelli is telling you to build. Not the image of someone who's always angry, but someone who's slow to anger and absolute in consequence. People don't fear your emotions, they fear your decisions. And if your decisions never carry weight, your emotions are just entertainment. Here's a real-life example. You have a coworker who constantly takes credit for your work. You've complained to your manager. You've confronted the coworker. You've vented to friends. But nothing changes. Why? Because you keep giving chances. You keep talking. But you haven't removed your cooperation. You haven't stopped helping. You haven't made them feel what it's like to operate without you. So they don't respect your words. They don't have to. But imagine this. Next time they take credit, you say nothing. You just stop sharing information with them. You stop covering for them. You let them fail publicly. No explanation, no announcement, just silence and consequence. That's when they learn. That's when everyone learns. Not because you yelled, but because they felt it. The psychology here is simple. Humans are wired to test boundaries. We push until something pushes back. And if nothing pushes back, we assume there's no boundary. That's not cruelty. That's survival. People are unconsciously calculating who they can afford to disrespect. And if you've been all warnings and no action, you've taught them that disrespecting you is free. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't advocate for cruelty's sake. He advocated for decisiveness, for finality. Because partial consequences don't register, they're just inconveniences. But real consequences, those get remembered, those reshape behavior, and that's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to hurt people, you're trying to teach them that you're not negotiable. Here's the consequence if you ignore this rule. You'll be stuck in an endless cycle of frustration. You'll complain, you'll argue, you'll set boundaries, but nothing will change. Because people only respect boundaries that are enforced. And if you're not enforcing, you're just talking. So stop talking, start acting, and let the consequences do the teaching. If you feel this, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 3. Control the first impression or spend the rest of your life correcting it. You only get one shot at this. 1. The first time someone meets you, their brain makes 1,000 calculations in under 7 seconds. Are you a threat? Are you safe? Are you high value? Are you forgettable? And whatever they decide in those 7 seconds becomes the lens through which they interpret everything you do afterward. That's why Machiavelli was obsessed with entrances, with appearances, not because he was shallow, but because he understood that perception is reality in the social game. And if you lose the first impression, you're starting every interaction from a deficit. You'll spend months, sometimes years, trying to convince someone that you're not who they thought you were. And even then, the original image haunts you. Most men don't think about this. They show up as themselves, casual, friendly, open, and they think that's honest. But here's the problem. Yourself might be low status in their eyes. Your natural warmth might read as neediness. Your openness might read as desperation. Your friendliness might read as weakness. And once that's locked in, everything you do gets filtered through that frame. You try to assert yourself later, and they're confused. Why is he acting tough? He's not that guy. But you are that guy. You just didn't show it first. And now you're paying for it. Here's the fix. Become intentional about how you enter spaces. Not fake, intentional. Think about the image you want to project before you project it. Do you want to be seen as dominant? Then walk in like you own the room. Slow movements, steady eye contact, minimal talking. Do you want to be seen as valuable? Then act like your time is scarce. Don't be the first to laugh. Don't fill silences. Let people come to you. Do you want to be seen as dangerous? Then be calm, be measured, and let there be a slight edge in your tone that says, "I'm in control, and I'm choosing to be pleasant right now." That undertone, that subtle implication that you could be otherwise, that's what creates the image. That's what makes people hesitate before disrespecting you. Machiavelli advised princes to study not just what they were, but what they appeared to be, because the masses judge by appearances, and if you look weak, if you enter weak, you'll be treated as weak, even if you're not. That's the game. And ignoring it doesn't make you authentic. It makes you naive. You can be yourself once respect is established. But the first impression? That's a negotiation, and you need to win it. Because people rarely give you a second chance to rewrite their perception. They just file you away as whatever they saw first and move on. If you've been the guy who shows up too friendly, too eager, too available, start shifting. Next time you walk into a room, pause. Take your time. Let people notice you before you acknowledge them. Speak less, move slower, and watch how the energy changes. Watch how people start calculating you differently. That's not manipulation, that's strategy. And in a world where everyone's calculating everyone, you'd be a fool not to play. If this landed, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 4. Reward loyalty loudly. Punish betrayal silently. This is how you build a reputation that protects you before conflict even starts. Machiavelli observed that the best rulers weren't the ones who were universally loved or universally feared. They were the ones who made it clear what happens when you're with them versus against them. The reward for loyalty was public, visible, and generous. The punishment for betrayal was quiet, absolute, and irreversible. This creates a psychological contrast. People want to be on the rewarded side. They don't want to risk the punishment. And if you do this consistently, you don't have to enforce boundaries all the time. The reputation does it for you. Most men get this backwards. They take loyalty for granted and punish betrayal with loud, emotional outbursts. So, what happens? The loyal people feel undervalued and drift away, and the betrayers get attention, drama, and sometimes even sympathy from others who see you as overreacting. You lose twice. The right move is the opposite. When someone's loyal, when someone supports you, when someone has your back, make it known. Thank them publicly, give them credit, elevate them in front of others. This does two things. It rewards the person, and it signals to everyone watching that loyalty to you is valuable. It's an investment that pays, and people are attracted to value. But when someone betrays you, when someone disrespects you, breaks trust, crosses a line, don't announce it, don't post about it, don't tell the group, just cut them off, completely. No explanation, no second chances, no closure, they're just gone. And if people ask, you say nothing, or you say, "We're no longer connected," and move on. The silence is more terrifying than any confrontation, because they don't know what you're thinking, they don't know what you might do. And everyone who hears about it quietly wonders, what did they do to deserve that? That ambiguity is powerful. It makes people cautious. It makes them think twice before testing you. Here's the psychology. Public punishment makes you look emotional and petty. It gives the betrayer attention and sometimes even sympathy. But silent removal makes you look controlled and final. It makes the betrayer irrelevant. And irrelevance is a deeper punishment than anger. Because anger means you still care. Silence means they no longer exist to you. That's a power move. Machiavelli would approve. He wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." But I'd add, never attempt to win by emotion what can be won by absence. Your silence is scarier than your rage. Use it. The consequence of ignoring this rule? You'll be surrounded by people who take your loyalty for granted and constantly test your boundaries, because you've shown them that betrayal is dramatic but survivable, and loyalty is expected but unrewarded. That's a losing structure. Flip it. Make loyalty attractive. Make betrayal final. And watch how the quality of people around you transforms. If you're starting to see it, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 5. Never reveal your full capability until the moment it's needed. Men who show all their cards too early are easy to predict, easy to counter, and easy to dismiss. Machiavelli understood that power is amplified by mystery. If people know exactly what you're capable of, they can plan around you. They can neutralize you. But if they're never quite sure, if there's always a sense that you're holding something back, they'll be cautious. They'll overestimate you. And that overestimation works in your favor. This is why the most dangerous men in history were often the quietest. They didn't need to flex. Their reputation did the work. And when they finally moved, it was devastating because no one saw the full scope coming. You do the opposite. You show everything. You tell people about your plans. You post your progress. You explain your strategy. And you think that's transparency. But it's not. It's a vulnerability. Because now everyone knows your limits. They know your resources. They know your timeline. And if they want to, they can interfere. They can copy. They can be undermined. Not out of malice, always. Sometimes just because they can. But if you'd kept it quiet, if you'd moved in silence and revealed the result, they couldn't have stopped you. They could only react. And by then, it's too late. Here's a real-world example. You're in a meeting and someone challenges you on something you've actually mastered. Instead of immediately dismantling them with everything you know, you say something measured. You give them just enough to answer the challenge, but you don't show the full depth. Later, if they push again, you drop another layer, and another. Each time, they realize you knew more than you let on. That's intimidating, because now they're wondering, what else does he know that he's not saying? That uncertainty makes them think twice before challenging you again. But if you dumped all your knowledge in the first response, they'd know your ceiling, and they'd adjust. Now you've lost the advantage. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The fox hides his capability until it's needed. The lion reveals it only when the moment demands. You need both. You need to know when to be subtle and when to be overwhelming. But you can't be overwhelmed all the time, because then you're predictable, and predictable men get outmaneuvered. The smartest move is to always keep something in reserve, a skill they don't know about, a connection they didn't expect, a level of intensity they've never seen from you. That reserve is your edge. The social consequence of ignoring this: you'll plateau fast. People will categorize you, dismiss you, or work around you, because you've given them all the information they need. There's no mystery, no danger, no respect. But if you learn to move quietly, to underpromise and overdeliver, to keep your full power hidden until it's strategically necessary, you'll become the person people are afraid to underestimate. And that's the image you're building. If this resonates, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 6, master the art of calculated coldness. Warmth is expensive, and most men give it away for free. You smile at everyone. You're agreeable in every conversation. You bend over backward to make people comfortable, and you think that's how you build relationships. But what you're actually doing is destroying your value, because warmth without scarcity is just neediness. It signals that you're desperate for approval, for connection, for validation. And people don't respect desperation, they exploit it. Machiavelli never said you shouldn't be warm. He said you should be warm strategically, with the people who've earned it, at the moments when it serves you. But default warmth, indiscriminate warmth, constant warmth, that's a liability. The most respected men you know aren't warm by default. They're neutral. maybe even slightly cold. And when they do show warmth, it feels earned. It feels significant. That contrast is what makes it valuable. If you're warm to everyone, your warmth means nothing. But if you're measured, if you're selective, if people have to work to see your softer side, then when they do, it matters. This isn't about being an asshole. It's about understanding that emotional availability is a resource, and resources need to be managed, not squandered. Here's how you apply this. Stop being the first to smile. Stop filling every silence. Stop rushing to make others comfortable. Let there be a moment of tension. Let people feel unsure of where they stand with you. That discomfort is where respect is born, because now they're thinking about you. They're wondering if you like them. They're calculating how to earn your approval. You've flipped the script. Instead of chasing their validation, they're chasing yours. That's power. And it doesn't require cruelty. It just requires restraint. Think about the people who intimidate you, even just a little. Are they overly friendly? Do they laugh at every joke? Do they seek your approval? No. They're composed. They're self-contained. And their emotional reactions are unpredictable enough that you're always slightly cautious around them. That's the image you're building. Not someone who's mean, but someone who's measured. Someone whose warmth is a reward, not a given. Machiavelli would tell you that this is how you create psychological leverage, because the person who cares less has more power. And calculated coldness signals that you care less. Even if you don't, it's about appearance. And appearance shapes reality. The consequence of ignoring this? You'll be everyone's emotional labor, the therapist, the cheerleader, the guy who's always there. And you'll wonder why no one's ever there for you. Why does no one take you seriously? Why do people feel comfortable disrespecting you? It's because you've been too available, too warm, too safe. Scarcity creates value. Apply it to your emotions. And watch how people's behavior toward you shifts. If you're seeing the pattern, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 7. Build alliances before you need them, not during the crisis. When you're drowning, no one throws you a rope. They just watch to see if you'll make it to shore. That's human nature. People don't help the desperate. They help the powerful, or at least the potentially powerful. Machiavelli saw this in every political collapse he studied. The princes who fell weren't friendless because they were bad. They were friendless because they waited until they were weak to ask for help. And by then, aligning with them was a risk. No one wants to bet on a losing horse. So they were abandoned, betrayed, or worse, used as examples by their enemies. The lesson? You build your network when you don't need it, when you're strong, when you have something to offer. Because alliances built from strength are real. Alliances built from desperation are just temporary pity. You're making this mistake right now. You're isolated, focused, grinding alone. And you think that's noble, that you'll reach out when you need people. But here's what's going to happen. When you finally need help, when the moment comes that you can't handle alone, you'll realize you have no one to call. Because you didn't invest, you didn't maintain it, you didn't build. And now you're scrambling, looking desperate, and people can smell it. So they'll ghost you, or give you empty promises, or help half-heartedly. Not because they're bad people, but because you're asking them to invest in you when you've never invested in them. That's a bad trade. And people avoid bad trades. Here's the strategy. Start now. While you're still stable, while you still have value to offer, start connecting with people. Not transactionally, but intentionally. Offer help before you need it. Share resources before you're empty. Build goodwill before the crisis. Machiavelli wrote, "Friendships that are obtained by payments and not by greatness or nobility of mind may indeed be earned, but they are not secured." Translation: Real alliances are built on mutual respect and value exchange over time, not on one-time desperate requests. So be the person who shows up for others when they don't expect it. The person who adds value without asking for anything in return. That's how you build a network that will hold when the pressure comes. Think about the men who always seem to have support, who always have people vouching for them, defending them, opening doors for them. It's not luck, it's architecture. They spent years building those relationships, and when they needed them, they didn't have to ask. People just showed up. That's the position you want to be in. Not because you're manipulative, but because you've been valuable long before you needed value in return. That's the difference between a network and a contact list. A contact list is names. A network is people who will move for you. The consequence of ignoring this, you'll face your biggest challenges alone, and you'll be bitter about it. You'll blame people for not helping. But the truth is, you never gave them a reason to. You were a ghost until you needed something. And ghosts don't get loyalty. Start building now, while you still can, while you still have something to offer. Because the moment you need it, it's already too late. If this truth hits, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 8. Control your reactions, and you control how people calculate you. The man who reacts predictably is a man who can be controlled. Every time you get angry on cue, every time you celebrate on cue, every time someone can trigger an emotion in you and know exactly what they'll get, you've given them a remote control to your behavior. And they'll use it, not maliciously, always. But humans are pattern recognition machines. We test, we push, we see what gets a response, and once we find it, we use it. That's why Machiavelli was obsessed with composure. He saw that the rulers who lasted weren't the most emotional. They were the most controlled, the ones who could be insulted and not flinch, praise and not glow, threatened and not panicked, because their reactions weren't available for manipulation. You're the opposite. Someone criticizes you, and you spiral. Someone praises you, and you chase more of it. Someone threatens you, and you either collapse or explode. You're predictable. And predictable men are weak men, not because they can't fight, but because they can be steered. Someone insults you in a meeting, and you get defensive. Now, everyone knows how to shut you down. Someone flatters you, and you open up. Now everyone knows how to extract information from you. You've handed over the manual to your psychology, and people are reading it in real time. Here's how you fix it. Create a delay between stimulus and response. Someone says something designed to provoke you. Instead of reacting immediately, pause, breathe. Let the moment stretch, then respond, not from emotion, but from strategy. Ask yourself, what response serves me here? Not, what do I feel like saying? But, what moves me closer to my goal? That's the difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is automatic, a response is chosen, and people can't manipulate what they can't predict. Machiavelli would tell you that your composure is your armor. The moment people can't get a rise out of you, can't flatter you into compliance, can't scare you into retreat, you've become dangerous. Because now they don't know what you're thinking, they don't know your limits, they don't know your triggers, and that uncertainty makes them cautious. They start calculating differently. Maybe I shouldn't push him. I don't know how he'll respond. That's the image. That's the power. Not in being emotionless, but in being unreadable, in being controlled. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you and succeeded. What did they gain? Control, attention, proof that they could affect you. And what did you lose? Composure, respect, the upper hand. Now imagine if you just looked at them calmly and said nothing, or said something measured and cold. The power dynamic flips. They look desperate. You look untouchable. That's the shift you're going for. Not suppression, not pretending you don't feel, but choosing when and how to express what you feel. That's mastery. The consequence if you ignore this, you'll be an emotional puppet. People will pull your strings whenever they need to distract you, derail you, or disarm you. And you'll spend your life reacting instead of leading. Don't give them that power. Master your reactions, and you'll master the room. If you feel that, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 9. Let your silence be louder than their noise. Noise is cheap. Everyone's talking. Everyone's defending themselves, explaining themselves, justifying themselves. The room is full of voices trying to be heard, and you're one of them. Fighting for space, fighting for validation, fighting to be understood. But here's what Machiavelli knew. The man who talks the most is rarely the man who's feared the most. Because talking is what you do when you need to convince people. Silence is what you do when you don't. Silence says, "I don't owe you an explanation. I don't need your approval. I'm not here to persuade you." And that's terrifying to people who are used to arguing their way into relevance. You've been taught that silence is weakness, that if you don't defend yourself, people will think you're guilty, that if you don't speak up, you'll be forgotten. But that's a lie sold to men who don't have a presence. Men with real power don't need to fill the air. They occupy it. And when they do speak, people listen, not because they're loud, but because they're rare. Your words have no value if you're always using them, but if you're silent more than you speak, if you're selective, if people have to wait to hear from you, then when you do speak, it lands, it echoes, it shapes reality. Here's the application. Stop defending yourself in every argument. Stop explaining your choices to people who won't respect them anyway. Stop filling silences because you're uncomfortable. Let the silence sit. Let people squirm. Let them wonder what you're thinking. That discomfort is powerful. It forces them to fill the space. And in filling it, they often reveal more than you ever would have. They over-explain, they justify, they expose their insecurities. Meanwhile, you've said nothing, and you've learned everything. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince speaks little and listens much, because information is power, and every time you talk, you're giving information away, your position, your strategy, your emotions. But when you're silent, you're gathering, you're observing, you're calculating, and people can't prepare for what they don't understand. That's the advantage. The loudest man in the room is usually the weakest, because he's desperate to be heard. But the quietest man, he's the one everyone's watching, trying to figure it out, trying not to offend. That's the position of power. The social consequence of ignoring this, you'll exhaust yourself trying to be heard and still be ignored, because you're competing in a game of volume, and you'll never outshout everyone, but you can out-silence them. You can become the person whose rare words carry weight, whose presence doesn't need an announcement, whose silence is so steady that people start to fear what happens when it breaks. That's the intimidation you're building, not through aggression, through restraint. If this is clicking, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 10. Your past mistakes are only weaknesses if you apologize for them repeatedly. Men are obsessed with redemption, with proof they've changed, with apologizing for who they used to be. And every time you do this, every time you bring up your past failures unprompted, you're reminding people to see you as flawed. Machiavelli never said to deny your past. He said to reframe it, to own it without apology. Because the man who's ashamed of his past is a man who's still controlled by it. But the man who's integrated his past, who's learned from it and moved forward without guilt, that's a man who can't be shamed. And a man who can't be shamed can't be manipulated. You do this constantly. Someone brings up an old mistake. and you immediately go into apology mode. Yeah, I know. I was stupid back then. I'm sorry. I've changed. And you think that's accountability. But what it actually is surrender. You're validating their right to judge you. You're giving them power over your narrative. Instead, the response should be, "That was years ago. I'm not that person anymore." If you want to stay stuck on it, that's your choice. No apology, no groveling, just a boundary. You've moved on. And if they haven't, that's their problem, not yours. Here's the psychology. People respect people who respect themselves. And if you don't respect your past self enough to stop apologizing for him, why should anyone else? Every apology is a signal that you're still ashamed, that you still see yourself as lesser, and people mirror that back to you. But if you own your past without shame, if you say, "I did what I did, I learned, I evolved," that's the story. People have nowhere to attack because you're not defending, you're stating. And statements don't invite debate the way apologies do. Machiavelli observed that rulers who constantly apologized for their decisions lost authority, because an apology implies that you were wrong, and if you were wrong then, why should people trust you now? But rulers who stood by their decisions, even the controversial ones, maintained power, because they didn't waver, they didn't second-guess themselves publicly, and that consistency is what people follow. Not perfection, consistency. So stop apologizing for your past, stop bringing it up, and if someone else does, shut it down with calm finality. That's behind me. Let's focus on now. That's power. The consequence of ignoring this, you'll be haunted. People will weaponize your past every time they want to undermine your present, and you'll let them, because you've been trained to feel guilty. But guilt is only useful if it drives change. Once you've changed, guilt is just self-sabotage. Let it go. Own your story without shame, and refuse to let anyone use your history as a leash. That's how you build an untouchable image, not by being perfect, but by being immovable. If you're feeling this, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 11. The man who needs nothing from you is the man you'll chase. Neediness repels. Indifference attracts. You've seen this your entire life. The friend who always needs something from you becomes exhausting. The woman who's too available becomes uninteresting. The co-worker who's always asking for help becomes a burden. But the person who seems completely self-sufficient, who doesn't ask, who doesn't need, who would be fine without you, you're drawn to them. You want their attention, their approval, their time, not because they're doing anything special, but because they're not doing what everyone else is doing. They're not chasing, and that scarcity is magnetic. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." But the inverse is also true. The man who seeks nothing will always find people seeking him, because people are wired to pursue what feels scarce and avoid what feels abundant. And if you're always available, always helping, always giving, you feel abundant, which means you feel cheap. Not because you are, but because scarcity is the only language value speaks in social dynamics. Here's the shift. Stop being so available. Stop responding immediately. Stop saying yes to every request. Start creating space. Start making people wait, not to be cruel, but to recalibrate their perception of your value. When you're always there, you're taken for granted. But when you're sometimes unavailable, sometimes busy, sometimes not interested, people start to value the times you are there. They start to compete for your attention, and that's when respect happens. Because now you're not the option, you're the choice. And choices have value. Think about the people in your life who command respect. Are they the ones always offering help, always reaching out? always available? No. They're the ones who show up when they choose to, who gives when it serves them, who are present but not desperate, and people orbit them. Because there's a sense that their time, their energy, their attention is limited. And limited resources are valuable resources. You need to become that, not fake, not playing games, but genuinely valuing your time enough that you're not giving it away to everyone who asks. The social consequence of ignoring this? You'll be used. Constantly. People will take and take and take because you keep giving, and you'll resent them for it. But it's not their fault. You've trained them that you're a resource with no cost. Flip that. Become expensive, not in money, in access. Make people earn your time, your help, your energy, and watch how quickly they start to respect you. Machiavelli would tell you that the prince who's too generous becomes poor, and the man who's too available becomes invisible. Be scarce, be selective, and let people chase the value you've been giving away. If this landed, type, "I see the truth." Rule number 12. You don't need to destroy your enemies. You just need to make aligning with you more profitable than opposing you. War is expensive, even when you win. Machiavelli knew this. He saw princes who won battles but lost kingdoms because the cost of winning drained them. The smarter move isn't to crush everyone who opposes you. It's to make opposition pointless, to structure your life, your reputation, your value in a way that people naturally align with you. Not out of fear, always, but out of self-interest. Because aligning with you gets them something, and opposing you gets them nothing. That's the ultimate power. Not dominance through force, but dominance through inevitability. You're too focused on fighting. Someone disrespects you, and you want revenge. Someone undermines you, and you want to expose them. Someone competes with you, and you want to destroy them. That's exhausting, and it makes you look reactive. The better move is to become so valuable, so connected, so respected, that opposing you is just a bad career move, a bad social move, a bad strategic move. You don't have to say that. You don't have to threaten it. It's just understood. People look at you and think, "I'd rather have him as an ally than an enemy," and they adjust their behavior accordingly. Here's how you build that. Focus on becoming undeniable. Master your craft. Build your network. Deliver results. Help people who can help you. Create a reputation for being someone who rewards loyalty and punishes betrayal silently but absolutely. Over time, people will start to see the pattern. They'll see that being on your side leads to wins, and being against you leads to isolation. You don't have to tell them, they'll just notice, and the smart ones will align. The dumb ones will oppose, and you'll let their opposition cost them while you keep moving forward. Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved." But he also wrote, "A prince must be feared in such a way that, if he does not win love, he avoids hatred." Translation, you don't need everyone to like you, but you do need them to respect the logic of aligning with you. And you need to avoid being so aggressive that you create lifelong enemies who have nothing to lose. That's the balance. Be valuable enough that people want you as an ally. Be firm enough that they don't want you as an enemy. And structure your image so that the choice is obvious. The consequence of ignoring this, you'll spend your life fighting battles you don't need to fight, burning bridges you could have used, making enemies out of people who could have been neutral or even helpful, because you were too focused on proving dominance instead of building inevitability. The most powerful men don't need to fight. People just move out of their way, or move with them. That's the image you're building, not a warrior, a force. Someone it's smarter to align with than oppose. And once you reach that, you've won. Not a battle, the entire war. If this is making sense, type I see the truth. You're not the same person who started this video. Something shifted. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it hit you like a hammer, but you felt it. The recognition that the game you've been playing was rigged from the start, not by some external force, but by you, by the image you built or didn't build, by the boundaries you set or didn't set, by the reputation you earned or surrendered. Machiavelli spent his life studying why some men rise and others fall, and the answer wasn't talent, it wasn't luck, it was a strategy. It was the willingness to architect your image before the world did it for you. Most men will ignore this. They'll watch this video, feel something, and then go right back to being harmless, right back to being the nice guy, the available guy, the guy everyone takes for granted. And in 5 years, they'll be in the same place, wondering why no one respects them, why no one fears them, why are they still invisible? But you're different. You wouldn't have made it this far if you weren't. You're the man who's tired of losing by being good, the man who's ready to win by being strategic. And that's the only difference that matters. Here's your identity shift. You are no longer negotiating your value with people who don't see it. You're no longer explaining yourself to people who've already decided you're guilty. You're no longer chasing respect from people who are comfortable disrespecting you. You're done. And from this moment forward, you're building the image that makes people hesitate, the image that makes them calculate twice before crossing you. Not because you're loud, but because you're final. Not because you're cruel, but because you're unavailable to disrespect. That's the man Machiavelli would tell you to become, and that's the man you're becoming right now. Build your image in silence. Let your reputation speak in war. Comment the rule you're applying first. Save this video and share it with someone who's been too soft for too long. It's time they wake up too.